I'm not getting it, I say, scrubbing paint off my panel for the third time. Ignore what you see, shouts Michael. He shouts above the white, splashing, thunderous fall of water. Ignore what you see, just paint the sound. There is a difference between a studio painting and a painting en plein air. Sometimes in the studio, the wind is lost. Painting in plein air, we don't have to remember the cold, the black rusty water, the momentary splash of color, the depth and size of what we see, and how it makes us feel. We don't have to remember how we can almost caress the rolling hills, how the rock face looms like a giant intrusion, how ominous are the clouds, how small and temporary we feel. It is right there, and maybe some of it will find its way onto the canvas. We sit in the cove and watch the fog obscure the sea beyond, the rocks and green pines. Michael paints it cold and wet, which it is. Icy dancing colors, for the sun on our backs is warm, the air is clean, and the day is long. A fog bank slides up the estuary, in the marsh grass, opposite the ghost white logs and slick wet pines. We are chilled and dream of wood fires, cozy hearths, while herons watch and otters have their say. We are low on the river bank, out of the sun. The cold is palpable. The wind comes in unpredictable gusts against the water's flow. Michael sits and paints, unaware until his hand is trembling, his body shaking with the chill. He has turned the small cataract into a broad ice field. He has painted from his bones. The forests are dry this year. Emily spent days inside the elephant with dogs and Wu hiding from persistent rain, then stepping out to catch a swirl of warm wind running through the grasses, up the lone pine and into the breaking sky. There are two theories of the way We Met Canyon was formed. something of retreating glaciers and tectonic upheaval. Ignoring these, we gave thumbs up to God for his work. Detecting some tongue-in-cheek, he rained ice pellets upon us. Milne had two theories of painting. In the first, one plans and designs and composes, then paints. In the second, you plunge right in and battle your way out. Michael adheres to the first, I to the second. It could be a failing of character.
It was pouring rain, and the wind was blowing, and the RV was rocking in the wind, and it was impossible to paint at that time outdoors. The wind and the rain would have soaked the surface of the panel that I paint on, and it wouldn't adhere to the panel, so it would be ridiculous to try to attempt to do it. Emily had a caravan called the Elephant, and it was, from what I understand, it was well equipped, comfortable. She shared it with her pets. Milne didn't have an RV, but Milne did build a shelter. He had several painting places, and he would build a shelter similar to what a hunter calls a blind. And he would leave it there, and he would go to it in all kinds of weather. So I don't feel that I'm actually cheating. If Milne can do that, so can I. Tom Thomson is my favorite Canadian artist. I don't think there's anybody else who has been able to capture the spirit of a place with color any better than Tom Thomson. He is still the inspiration to get out there and try and just mix up the paint and see what happens. There are times when I'll look around and I'll say, there's a Thomson. Other times it'll be a David Milne. But I think Thomson has captured Ontario the way I see it and feel it. David Milne for me is simplicity. He helps me to look at the complex landscape with all the billions of leaves and textures, and David Milne has given me the way of trying to condense and break down all that confusion. I think his power lies in his ability to simplify to the point of the paint, the thickness of paint is even simplified to just a mere dragging of the brush across the surface. Yeah, he sits down right beside me.
Emily Carr wrote as well as any artist about her painting, her struggle to create in charcoal and oil something that revealed a truth, an essence, an image that captured her own intensely spiritual response to the land around her. Tom canoed on the lakes of Algonquin and searched for something honest and real, something that could be painted onto a small wooden panel and still reveal the grandeur and power of the Canadian wilderness. Milne was more sublime. A few simple lines, patches of color, a modest palette. He asked how much can be left out without losing the meaning. In fact, by leaving much out, he heightened the rest. Even more than Tom and Emily, his paintings are of himself in the landscape, austere, direct, articulate.
Emily is a great woman, particularly in her latter years. She had the guts to try things, and she was out there in the West all by herself pretty much, and didn't get the recognition until her last years. But I think for me, her work on brown paper of the beaches and the guts to take the horizon line and curve it and do water scenes that had not flat surfaces but curved surfaces, and they almost spill out over the edge of the paper, and there's a splashing, and the sky also reflects this whole motion. And I think that it's the whirling and the swirling in her work that just plays. It's very playful, and it makes painting fun. And I hope that that shows up in my own work sometime.
Winter comes quickly to the Laurentians above the shield. We were expecting autumn, but the sky and wind bring messages of snow. We stand in a shelter on an empty picnic ground where Laco Rats allows us a few hours. But it is clear the land wants solitude, wants us to leave so it may enjoy its white blanket of winter alone.